In apartments across 1960s America, families faced the same terrifying nightly ritual. Hour after hour, they would lie awake listening to every creak and footstep in the hallway, their hearts racing, their minds imagining the worst, their safety dependent on locks that felt inadequate, and police who might not come in time. For generations, this vulnerability seemed like an unchangeable fact of urban life. But in a modest Queens apartment, a document tells a different story. Hidden among thousands of forgotten patent applications is proof that an overnight nurse saw this everyday fear and refused to accept it as inevitable. She understood the problem so intimately that she was able to envision a solution so many others had missed. Let's take a trip back to 1966, where a revolution in home security was about to begin. It would start with an invention that promised to transform one of humanity's most basic needs, feeling safe in our own homes, and it would come from a place no one expected. Chapter 1: A City in Crisis. Marie Van Brittan Brown was born around 1922 in an America where her existence as an African American woman in a demanding profession made her acutely aware of vulnerability. The details of her early life remain largely unknown, but what we do know comes from the traces she left in a world that was rapidly changing around her. By the 1960s, Marie was working as a nurse in New York City, living in Jamaica, Queens with her husband Albert Brown, an electrician. The neighborhood they called home was experiencing the profound social upheaval that defined urban America during this turbulent decade. Queens in the 1960s was a borough in transition. The phenomenon known as white flight was reshaping neighborhoods as middle-class white residents moved to the suburbs, while African-American families and Caribbean immigrants moved in. This demographic shift brought cultural richness, but also economic challenges as manufacturing jobs disappeared and public sector employment became increasingly competitive. For Marie, working as a nurse meant irregular hours, often returning home late at night to an empty apartment. The nursing profession in the early 1960s was demanding and exhausting, with long shifts that could extend well into the night. Albert's work as an electrician also meant unpredictable schedules, leaving Marie frequently alone during vulnerable hours. The social context made these late-night homecomings particularly frightening. Crime rates across New York City were rising steadily. The 1964 Harlem riot had spread through parts of Brooklyn and Queens for 6 days, contributing to a general sense of unease across the city. For residents in certain neighborhoods, police response times were frustratingly slow, whether due to understaffing, geographic challenges, or the prioritization of some areas over others. Chapter 2: The Weight of Fear. Marie's daily routine would have involved not just the physical demands of nursing, but also the psychological burden of constant vigilance. Every time she approached her apartment building late at night, every unfamiliar sound in the hallway, every knock at the door became a source of anxiety. The traditional home security measures available in the 1960s were primitive by today's standards. Most people relied on basic door locks, peepholes, and chain latches, passive measures that offered little real protection and no way to identify threats before they were literally at your door. For someone coming home alone at night, the walk from the street to the apartment door represented a particularly vulnerable moment. Once inside, residents had no way to see who was approaching their building or apartment without physically going to the window or opening the door, actions that could put them at greater risk. The standard peephole, while useful, had significant limitations. It provided only a narrow field of view, could be obscured by visitors, and required residents to approach the door to use it. For most, such limitations were par the course, but for Marie, these limitations were simply unacceptable. Besides the limited means of securing one's home, even if you could see a potential threat, there was often little you could do about it. Calling for help meant reaching a telephone and hoping police would respond quickly, something her neighborhood's experience suggested was far from guaranteed. But Marie Van Brittan Brown was the kind of person who saw problems as opportunities for innovation. Her experience in healthcare had taught her the importance of systems that could monitor, communicate, and respond to emergencies efficiently. Why couldn't these same principles apply to home security? Chapter 3: A Partnership of Life and Innovation. When Marie began discussing her security concerns with her husband Albert, she found a partner whose technical expertise perfectly complemented her practical insights. Albert's work as an electrician gave him knowledge of wiring, circuits, and the emerging electronic technologies that were beginning to transform American homes and businesses. Together, they began envisioning a comprehensive security system that would address all the vulnerabilities Marie experienced in her daily life. Their approach was both systematic and innovative, breaking down the security challenge into distinct but interconnected problems. First, they needed a way to see visitors without approaching the door. Albert suggested adapting closed-circuit television technology, which was becoming more common in commercial settings like banks and department stores. The idea of bringing CCTV into homes was virtually unheard of in the 1960s, but Albert understood the technical requirements for connecting cameras to monitors via coaxial cables. Marie insisted on two-way communication capability. Drawing from her hospital experience with intercom systems, she knew that being able to talk to visitors was crucial for determining their intentions without compromising safety. The ability to communicate from a distance would allow residents to gather information and potentially diffuse situations before they escalated. But Marie's vision went beyond just monitoring and communication. She recognized that slow police response times were a fundamental problem that individual security measures couldn't solve. This led to their most innovative feature, a direct emergency alert system that could quickly summon help when needed. Chapter 4: Engineering Solutions. The Browns' design was remarkably sophisticated for its time. Their camera system used multiple mounted cameras that could capture different areas around the entrance, connected to a monitor that could be placed anywhere in the home. This gave residents a comprehensive view of their surroundings without requiring them to be near the door. The two-way communication system allowed residents to speak with visitors through an intercom while watching them on the monitor. This combination of audio and visual monitoring provided far more information than traditional peepholes or door chains, enabling better decision-making about whether to admit visitors. Perhaps most importantly, their system included multiple emergency alert options. Residents could send signals directly to police, security guards, or trusted neighbors with the push of a button. This feature addressed the critical problem of slow emergency response by creating direct communication channels that bypassed traditional phone systems. The Browns also incorporated a remote-controlled door lock mechanism. This allowed residents to admit welcome visitors without physically approaching the door, adding an extra layer of safety for situations where residents felt comfortable allowing entry but wanted to maintain distance. Their complete system represented a fundamental shift in home security philosophy. Rather than simply making homes harder to break into, their invention empowered residents with information, communication capabilities, and rapid access to help. Chapter 5: The Patent Process. On August 1, 1966, Marie Van Brittan Brown and Albert Brown filed an application for U.S. Patent Number 3,482,037 for their home security system utilizing television surveillance. The application process required detailed technical drawings and precise descriptions of their invention's innovative features. The patent application demonstrated the sophistication of their thinking. They had created not just a single device, but an integrated system that addressed multiple security challenges simultaneously. The Patent Office recognized the innovation by approving their application, though the process would take nearly 3 years to complete. The Browns' patent application was groundbreaking in multiple ways. It represented one of the earliest attempts to bring advanced surveillance technology into residential settings. Their integration of video monitoring, two-way communication, and emergency alert systems established the template for modern home security systems. On December 2, 1969, Marie Van Brittan Brown received U.S. Patent number 3,482,037. The timing of this patent was significant in the broader context of American innovation. The late 1960s were a period of rapid technological advancement, with inventors developing everything from integrated circuits to communication satellites. Against this backdrop of celebrated innovations, the Browns' practical solution to everyday security concerns represented a different but equally high-tech kind of progress. Chapter 6: Ahead of its time. Despite the groundbreaking nature of their invention, the Browns faced significant challenges in bringing their system to market. In 1969, the technology required for their design was expensive and difficult to manufacture for home use. The television monitors, cameras, and electronic components that made their system possible were still primarily designed for commercial and industrial applications. Marie Van Brittan Brown did receive some recognition for her achievement. The New York Times featured her invention, and she received commendations from various organizations recognizing her contribution to home security innovation. However, widespread adoption of her concepts would have to wait for technology to become more affordable and accessible. What Marie had created was essentially a vision of the future, a comprehensive approach to home security that would become standard decades later. Her patent became a foundational document that later inventors would reference and build upon as technology evolved to make her ideas practical for mass production. Modern systems like Ring doorbells, ADT monitoring services, and smart home security platforms all trace their conceptual lineage back to the innovations Marie Van Brittan Brown pioneered in her Queens apartment. Chapter 7: Recognition and Legacy. Marie Van Brittan Brown died in 1999, having lived to see many of her innovations become commonplace in American homes. By the time of her death, video doorbells, home monitoring systems, and remote access security had evolved from her futuristic concepts into everyday consumer products. Yet despite the enormous influence of her work, Marie never received the recognition accorded to many other inventors whose contributions proved less foundational. Her story reflects the broader historical invisibility of African American women innovators whose achievements were often overlooked or credited to others. At the root of it all, Marie's approach to innovation was practical in nature. She wasn't trying to impress investors or revolutionize an industry. She was simply trying to solve a problem that was making her daily life frightening and difficult. And with that, a billion-dollar industry was made possible. An industry which owes its fundamental architecture to the vision of a nurse from Queens who refused to accept that feeling unsafe at home was just a fact of life. If you want to see more stories of historic Black inventors who overcame incredible challenges to change the world, make sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification button for updates on new video releases. This is Innovators Journal. Thank you for watching.